Hi, I'm Sherry Bookstaff, a biology professor at Skyline College. 13 years ago, I spent 9 months in the hospital having a brain tumor removed and following a stroke, having a stroke recovery. And what happened was that I had to have a tracheotomy because I couldn't breathe without one. So when I was in the on a gurney outside of the OR, waiting to be brought into the OR to have my tracheotomy put in, the surgeon said to me, he thought I was afraid of having a scar when it was over. So he said to me, oh, there's a famous actress named Catherine Zeta-Jones, and she had tracheotomy when she was a kid, and you can't see her scar, so I shouldn't be afraid of a scar. Well, let me tell you that when I was lying there and I couldn't breathe and couldn't walk and couldn't talk and couldn't swallow and couldn't move, the last thing I was worried about was a scar on my neck. I wanted to be able to breathe. I was worried about the thought of a knife cutting into my throat, not about a scar on my neck. So this doctor clearly lacked empathy. Throughout this video series, we're going to hear more stories from patients with both empathetic doctors and unempathetic doctors, and hopefully get some feedback from medical professionals, really giving you ideas of how you can improve your patient connections. So please subscribe below so you don't miss anything of the series. Thank you.
In 2001, I had the opportunity to meet Professor Bookstaff. She was the professional development coordinator. She was a faculty member here at Skyline College, a marine biologist, very active out in the field. As a matter of fact, our students, some of the greatest experiences that the students express that they've had is when they've gone out and actually in the field, on the waters, and I think her specialty is whales, and is really kind of fascinating and really intrigues people's interest in marine biology when they don't really know that they're interested in it. I have a particular fondness for that because I remember when my son was little, he wanted to be a marine biologist, and I was really excited about it because for a long time I couldn't get him off of wanting to be Spider-Man. So it's really kind of fun. And she really contributed to this institution. We have a phenomenal program that students have an opportunity to study in. In 2006, she became ill. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor. That actually was quite disconcerting to the institution. We had a faculty member who had a very serious diagnosis. She underwent surgery, and even in surgery had the complications where she had a stroke. And the institution was prepared to be very supportive in many ways. And as a matter of fact, Professor Bookstaff remains on the faculty, and even during the times when initially she could not resume her teaching duties, the institution kept her full-fledged as a faculty member and made sure that she maintained her position, and then also supported with resources the rehabilitation right here on site that she was able to go through, along with her additional medical care that she got, through her own healthcare providers. So it has been a journey, but the interesting thing is that we've had a chance to see her really move and improve and turn that experience into something that allowed her to continue to teach and be a contributing member in this institution. And she continues to have a significant impact here at Skyline College, particularly in the science department.
Just because someone looks healthy on the outside, just because they look young, doesn't mean that they have an anxiety disorder, doesn't mean they're not sick, doesn't mean that they're drug seeking, because I wasn't asking for pain meds, I was asking for blood tests. Just to try, and no matter what the person looks like, age, race, gender, whatever, try to be neutral and try to really listen to the person. They're the one experiencing everything. They know their body 20 times better than you do. Whether or not you go to med school and you know like symptoms and things like that, when a person's not feeling right, they know what their body feels like. They know their own homeostasis, and if it's off, they know what it feels like. So just really listen and try not to write them off, maybe because you've had like a negative experience with a patient prior. Try to do a fresh start with every patient and really understand where they're coming from.
Hell yeah. No, I would tell her, like, hey, you know what? Say 95% of your patients are drug seeking. That still leaves 5% that aren't. And you need to treat that as such.
Yeah.
Because even if you miss 5%, you're missing 5%. That's terrible.
Yeah.
So I just,
Yeah.
We had a chest pain patient, and he was very grumpy and didn't want to talk, and he's in pain all the time. And he was a widower, and we looked around, and there was a whole bunch of Navy pictures, and we asked about it, and he perked up like it was night and day. And he, oh, I was a Navy pilot, and I did this and that, and it was a total demeanor change. And I flashed back to that when you were talking. And I sincerely hope that these students and every student that you talk to takes this to heart, because it truly, truly does make a big impact on a person's life and their experience. Because when I run a chest pain call, it's my 10,000th time doing it, but it's there first.
Oh, well, yeah, the second time that I was in the emergency room, it was because I had become really short of breath after the original surgery, because I had developed blood clots in both lungs and in my leg. And when I got to the emergency room, I went through a lot of different tests, and they were all normal, and they were about to discharge me. And then right before that, they got the results of the chest scan they did, the CT scan of my chest, which showed that I had multiple blood clots in both lungs. And then everything changed. They became very sort of morose and serious and quiet. And it's almost like they didn't know how to handle it, because they had been so sort of upbeat and dismissive before that. And the thing I remember most of all is they originally told me that I had pulmonary emboli in both lungs, and I was just sort of shell-shocked, and I didn't really understand what that was, and I thought it was life-threatening. I thought like that I was just going to stand up and my chest was going to explode and I was going to die. And the doctor told me, and then he left the room, and then as it started to sink in, I got really kind of terrified, like, well, what does this mean exactly? And it's because he hadn't explained it at all. And so I asked the nurse to call him back into the room, and when he came back into the room, he was clearly bothered that I wanted his attention again. I think he was busy with another patient. And I asked him, what does this mean? Am I going to die? And he just looked up at the ceiling as if pondering the question. I'll never forget it. And he was just very not compassionate at all. No comforting words at all. No reassurance at all. I kind of don't even remember what he said. He was so detached from the situation. And it really left a lasting impact on me, just in a way that it's hard to talk about. When I think back about the experience, I immediately go to that interaction. It's very negative.
Throughout this series, we'll hear more patient stories and provider feedback. New videos will be launched on the 26th of each month. Subscribe now so you don't miss a thing.